Yeah. Hi, Scott.
I have the power to take him off stage.
Momentarily.
Yeah, that's true. He's got the power to come back
on stage.
So this is
Morning,
what happened.
Scott. Hi.
And then myself, Simon, and Randall, and I think Danielle too, we all have the power as admins.
Yeah.
So this is what you see sometimes when a screen flicks on and off really, really fast. Two people are trying to do the same thing. So
you can have two drivers. Two drivers doesn't work.
Yeah, too many drivers. You know, people can't be grabbing the wheel of the car.
No.
So
no, definitely not.
I have been on the verge of a sneeze for a while. If I dive off screen for a second, you know why.
Okay.
Now we left don't forget the queue up there. Something newer folks don't really know, and we will keep reminding you all of this. If people are talking in the chat, they're often answering each other's questions in chat.
Thank you.
There's general chat. There's people bouncing ideas back and forth. There are people answering each other's questions. So if we don't see a queue in front of your question, we're assuming it's for someone else in chat. Okay, we're not ignoring you. We just think it's not for us. So if you put a queue on there, the way Machan did, and Gary Montgomery. Gary! I'll tell you about Gary in a second. He's going to love it. No. But yeah, we assume it's not for us if there's no queue. If there is a queue, we put a star on it. It goes into a special list. We're good there.
It also just stands out better. So thanks for marking it that way, because I can see it quickly scanning down the list, because sometimes I'm involved helping to answer a question and then I can't look at the incoming questions. And
you don't see the number of times. We have a private chat on the side as well. You don't see the number of times Randall puts a link in there.
Yeah. Takes time.
Because he's looking ahead at what questions are coming up. Sometimes I do that too. Anyway.
Lots of stuff going on behind the scenes here that you don't care about. Yes. Sorry.
There are only two of us here. Do we really need an intro slide?
No, we can just wing it. We can wing it.
I'm Scott Stahl. I am one of the co-organizers of GDG Cleveland. Gary Montgomery in chat is the other one.
Oh, that's scary.
Yes. So we do that together. And I write code under Big Dog Apps. I bother Simon with lots of questions. I heckle Randall on the side. You know, it's a good paying gig. So Randall.
That's paying? Man, I want that job. I want the job to heckle myself for money. That would be very cool. Randall Schwartz. I've been involved in the computer industry since 1977 professionally. So I go back a long ways. The last 5.5 years, I've been a Dart and Flutter Google developer expert, one of 10 in the United States. And it's a nice privilege to have that kind of access to resources and stuff. And I also spend about an hour or two, or sometimes more, don't tell my employer, answering questions on Discord, Stack Overflow, occasionally Facebook when I feel like slumming it for a bit, and Reddit and Slack. So I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere.
You have no idea how many times I get pounded with requests to join Let's Flutter with Dart, and I'm not even an active admin over there. I haven't been for years, but the admins over there do a wonderful job. They do.
Yeah, Facebook's a bad place to have programming questions answered, though, because they always wraps your text, and then we can't see anything. You have to post it as links to other places. It's dumb. Anyway, so I tend to avoid that. I'm also a full-time, pretty much full-time, close to full-time Flutter coder. So I'm moving ones and zeros around with Flutter. So
gotcha.
Nice stuff.
We may or may not have some others coming on. They're juggling their schedules and trying to see if they can get here. Simon is on a plane to Amsterdam. He definitely will not be here. So that is why we've replaced him with Gemini.
So we're going to have the Simon bot finally, right? Simon GPT.
We're going to try that. Not GPT, Gemini. Oh,
It's
GPT.
what everybody GPT is the generic name for some of this
I
stuff though,
know. I
because that's
know.
Transformer is what came out of Google many years ago, which helped enable it for everybody else. So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, GPT, I can't remember what it stands for, but it's the technique. It's not a patented name.
Something transformation general.
Although Chat GPT, I think, is owned by Microsoft now.
That's a specific name, and that's the one I didn't mention specifically. I said Simon
No, they're
GPT.
fine. They're fine. OpenAI is a
Yeah.
really good product, but
Yep.
it does things in a completely different way.
Yep.
So do Llama 2 models. I've been playing with Llama 2 models at home.
Mhm.
And an interesting aside for this, if you didn't know, and I'm going to wait until we have 100 viewers. Yes, there we go. Congratulations. Welcome to our 100th viewer of the day. It's still climbing. Llama 2
If you will,
models.
yes, go ahead.
Llama 2 models that I download and run at home, typically they can do a little bit higher, but I find that they don't do very well with a context over about 8,000. Sometimes you can try to push them to 60, to 16,000. And actually, Lokesh, it got acquired. It's still being run as OpenAI, but as far as I know, it did get acquired. There's a guy I know there who mentioned it. So, I'm sorry, OpenAI was acquired by Microsoft. There were some concerns about that, but they seem to be doing just fine. Anyway, what was I saying? I was going to wait for,
Llama
yes,
models.
context size. Context size.
Yeah, context size.
The
Yes.
interesting thing, though, unlike a Llama 2 model, when I was first briefed on Gemini in a meeting, I said, well, what's the size of the context? Because I was thinking maybe it'd be 2,400 or, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so they don't own it outright, Lokesh? He says Microsoft has a stake in it, not owning it outright, I believe.
Yeah.
So, and I'm repeating this actually because I don't think anyone who is not on Twitter is seeing your questions. We are on Twitter, we're on Twitch, and we are on YouTube right now. So I don't know if you can see each other's questions. That's why I repeat things that are said. So anyway, I asked, what's the context? Because I'm like, oh yeah, it'll probably be 1,200 or 2,400, or they're still developing this thing. And in the meeting, they said 30,000. And I said, what? We had to ask 3 times to make sure that we didn't mishear what they said. 30,000. To give you an idea, if I'm not mistaken, you can put Tolstoy's War and Peace in 8,000. Do you think we can do that in 8,000 tokens?
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, it depends. Yeah, probably. Although that's still nothing compared to the million tokens that Gemini 1.5 has.
Gemini 1.5, before you go running out, there is no API yet. I paid for it. I didn't find out there was no API until after I paid for it. I contacted customer support. They were very nice and refunded my money.
It soon though. It has some bugs.
Yeah.
It has some limitations.
That's all right.
I've been
the day
playing
they
with
get an
it.
API, I'm whipping out my credit card.
Yeah, I've been playing with it. I've been throwing like an entire project, the code base, all of my Flutter code for a Flutter app. Been throwing that in there and then asking questions about it, and it hits it spot on. It is really bizarrely remarkable, cool stuff. So I'm looking forward to having that be more generally available. However, it takes because it has so many parameters, it takes about a minute for every single response. So it's like, oh, come on, answer this now. I've gotten spoiled by the faster chats. Yep. Anyway, continue.
Some people's children. I'll tell you what, I'm not even going to acknowledge it.
Okay.
There was something posted on Twitch that was absolutely useless and stupid, and the user's name is a joke. Anyway, yeah, the user's name is Urinary CS.
Yep.
So, some people's children. Okay, which reminds me, Do's and don'ts. Don't be an
Mhm.
idiot. Okay, that's
Yep.
rule number one. Rule number two is be good to each other. What else? This is not Reddit. We do have standards. Basically, all the rules focus around treating each other decently and the fact that we share ban lists. We did, unfortunately, just have to put that to use last week. Mioyo, that is a name. M-Y, I believe it is, or M-I. M-I-Y-O-Y-O, Mioyo. Is one of their,
MIYOY.
oh, thank you. I thought there was another O. Anyhow, we got together last week and scoured everywhere. We scrubbed this guy from Reddit. We scrubbed him from Discord. We scrubbed him from the Flutter community Slack. He's basically been scrubbed from existence for making some really stupid comments, trashing on people, and was like, bye. So Marco, how you doing, buddy? So yeah, we actually do take action on it. The nice thing about the community is, well, I can say it now. 6 years ago, we had a bunch of people who had formed everything. The people who formed the Discord, the Slacks, the Reddit mods. There weren't very many of us, so we all knew each other, and we kind of had to get together. I barely remember this. We had to get together and said, we're in a position to set the rules. It was a very unique position. So we laid out some rules about how people should treat each other and the way things should be, and we all agreed to them. We've all stuck to them ever since. It's a screw around and find out kind of approach, basically. And we've all been pretty firm with it. And that's the reason that you see everyone so nice and treating each other decently and being so very helpful and all those things that people say about the community. It's not any one person that did this. It was probably like 10 of us who said, these are the rules that we want to have. And it's worked, surprisingly.
Cool.
So anyway, yeah, I'm babbling
Yeah.
about that stuff.
We
Gemini.
should get into content. Yes.
Yes, content. What is content? I don't know. I was hoping to have someone here from Google. Unfortunately, it was too short a notice, but I am getting offers for people to come in the next week or two. So we will be revisiting this topic. Today, though, I do have the app. And as I said in the Twitter video, I have already written it. I already wrote it at the time I posted the video, but on Monday, there was no app. And I looked in the mirror and said to myself, if you're going to have this stupid thing ready for Wednesday, you better sit down and start writing code. So I did. It is nothing to look at. Okay, this thing is not pretty at all. I put all the effort into the back end and all the effort into commenting it like a fiend. And unfortunately, I'm an idiot and have not posted this thing to GitHub yet. But Randall will do a whole lot of talking later on in the show while I frantically post it to GitHub and make a bit.ly link so that you all can get the code.
Cool.
But in the meantime, yeah, sometimes I have been told I'm too honest.
Yeah.
But you know what? It comes with what I like to think of as inner strength, which is like, go ahead and try to hit me with a bus. I'll just laugh you off.
So we have 6 questions in the queue. Do you want to tackle those first before starting the Gemini stuff?
Let's touch on a couple of them at least.
Okay. I'll let
we
you
can
drive.
go ahead and take this banner down. Well, no, let's leave this up for a while. Again, for the people who have come in since we said this before, and we have a lot of people pouring in, so I'm going to need to repeat this.
Sure.
When you ask a question that does not have a Q in front of it, we assume you're talking to each other in chat.
Yep.
We think questions for us are marked with a Q. So if you don't put a Q there, we're not going to look at it. And we're not ignoring you. We just think it's not for us. It's really pretty simple. That said, okay, and that's why the don't forget the Q is still up on the screen. Let's take a look at something we've got here. Okay, here's a good one for you, Randall.
Really?
It's a
Okay.
question regarding object keys and value keys. If I use an object as a parameter for a value key and an object key, will it behave the same? In other words, reference equality. If yes, why do we need object keys?
I believe the answer is that if you make an object key of something that is not immutable, like say a list of 1, 2, 3, that's going to be two different object keys. Will it be the same value key though? Maybe not. I don't remember where the value key pierces down in depth or not. Boy, that's a tough one. I don't know the answer to this. I would have to play with it for a bit. I've never pondered this, so I haven't had a need to know this. I just pull out a value key when I'm trying to take unique items from a database that I can key by the ID number that comes in from the database, because that works really nice for that sort of stuff. I'm
Okay.
sure there is a reason. There must be some distinction between a value key and an object key. I just don't know what it is without looking at the API for a bit. And then it'll all become clear to me. I would recommend everybody watch Emily talk about keys for a few minutes, though, at some point in your programming career, if you haven't already. That's on the keys page of the API docs. I met Emily in person. It was like my only event I've gone to in my Dart and Flutter role. And that was the pre-COVID meetup for all the GDEs down in Silicon Valley.
Nice. Got it. And it's Emily Fortuna or Emily Shack? I'm sorry.
Emily Fortuna. She's long gone now. She's doing
Oh,
something
yeah.
else.
I know. I don't know if Emily Shack is still with Dart Team either.
Yeah, okay.
Anyhow,
Yeah, we chat.
I'm not sure about the object keys and value keys either, but one thing that makes me wonder is that everywhere else we're doing identity equality. So
Yeah.
I would not count on reference equality. I
Somebody in
really
the
wouldn't.
chat had a good idea here. Let me ask Gemini.
There you go. You still got the question?
Yeah.
All right. We're going to pop one more over here. Gary, buddy, is there support for RAG with the Gemini API? Well, I have not had a chance to read this. I can tell you that Gemini claims it has support for RAG. Says it allows it to access and utilize information from a vast database of text and code, which enhances its ability to generate informative and comprehensive responses. Now, the question is it BS? Because we asked it a factual question. Remember, when you ask it about history, you get something other than history. Richard, I just did. Where you been?
I've got an answer to the other question when you're ready to go back to
Alrighty.
it. So, object key uses identity. Value key uses equal equal, which may be overridden for an object. So yeah, so that's exactly the difference. So they are definitely different. Object key is identity, value key is equality.
So we have at least one item that is using reference equality in Flutter or Dart.
There are many things that use reference equality.
When in doubt, use fast immutable collections. Thank you,
Yeah,
Marco.
exactly. Wonderful package.
Yeah.
I
I'm
recommend it
sorry, not
frequently.
Marco. Mark.
Yeah. Cool.
Marcelo Glassberg, author of several things. And if you have read the article, what was it? Constraints go down, sizes go up.
Mm-hmm.
Parent sets position. That is Marcelo Glassberg. He's the same person who wrote Fast Immutable Collections. A much better way to do iterables in Dart.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. So let's see. Here's an easy one. Do we need Go Router if we don't want deep linking functionality on our app and it's not targeting web? There is no time you, quote, need Go Router. However, if you're going to use things in Navigator 2, it can make your life a whole lot easier. I almost never use it just because I don't use the kind of complexity that would need it. I try to keep things very straightforward, and I've been using Navigator 1 still. I have used Go Router and a couple of more complex apps, but there's no time you ever need it. But if you need things in Navigator 2, I would definitely use it. Randall, your opinion?
I think it solves a lot of typical use cases fairly nice. I have issues with the way that updates are being handled and the documentation level that's available for GoRouter. That's my only hesitancy in recommending it sort of flat out all the time. There's a plus though, in that it's coming out of the Flutter team, and so it's at least somewhat supported directly by them. But given how many there's been like 4 breaking change releases in the last year,
Mm.
and that concerns me to try to deploy this and have it as the backbone of my application. And when it's something is going to change in the next release, it's but that's true. That's true about any package. But I think for some particular reason, GoRouter is just really seems to be clicking forward. And then for a long time, the documentation was screwed up, and they took away the original website, which was actually pretty decent for documentation, and they still haven't completely replaced that in the
Well, but
existing.
that was Chris's, wasn't it?
Yeah, but still, it's like somebody could have taken that over that website, and managed it. It didn't need lots of the parts of it ended up in some of the parts of the documentation, but there are things you cannot look up on the API. I often, when I'm actually coding intensely with GoRouter, have just open up a IDE on GoRouter so I could see the source code and figure out what the heck's
Mm.
going on, because it's impenetrable without that. I think
Yeah,
it's
I
all
mean,
the way. Yeah, it's all the way mixins are used and stuff. It confuses the doc generation system, so you don't get the right kinds of things in the search box, and it drives me nuts.
we're not knocking Go Router. It's one of the
No,
best routing systems out there.
yeah,
Um, but the
it's
thing is, what Go Router is doing is it's abstracting away a lot of the stuff you would need to know for Navigator 2, because when they came out with Navigator 2, even people like Simon said, "What on earth is this?"
yeah.
And everybody was getting lost in it. So Chris Sells, the product manager for developer experience, Flutter and Dart, who has
Hmm.
since defected to Meta and is working on VR, last I heard. In fact, I ought to just ask him. But yeah, he created Go Router. And then when he left, it got taken over by the Flutter team because it is a great package. But it's complicated because it's abstracting away things that are really, really complicated. So keep that in
Cool.
mind. If you're keeping it simple, don't need it. If you've got needs where you're going to need to be doing a lot of deep linking and things like that, roll up your sleeves and learn it. All right. Whoops, wrong one. Let's
It's on
see.
you. I'm not doing anything.
Yep. Nope, that's me. I'm driving.
Yeah.
I have not touched Docker in 3 years. So I
Lucky.
see a lot of open source projects that have a Docker file. Is it for facilitating the project setup locally using Docker, or does it provide something more to Dockerize a Flutter project? The only thing I've ever
Dockerizing
Dockerized
Flutter
is a server.
makes sense. Yeah, Docker doesn't make sense for a UI toolkit. It's the wrong layer.
Yeah,
Um, unless you're talking about Dockerizing a Flutter web app that's being served from inside a Docker container, and then associate that with their database there and stuff. That might work.
that's true.
But Yeah, but so you put your entire environment, you put your database, you put your web server that's feeding web Flutter web out, and that sort of that makes sense to put in a scalable.
Let's say you get a present. Okay, it's either a box with nice, pretty paper on it and a bow, or if you're in Russia, maybe it's a bag that the snow girl brought. You get a present, and inside is your back end for your app. That present is Docker. So odds are whatever is there inside that Docker file is related to something in the back end that has to do with that app. But, Docker's a box. What they put into it, you got to go look.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
All right. I love this. Now, I have never worked with underlines, but I have a feeling the answer to this is probably going to be something similar to what I've done before. What I've done before is a long time ago, I wanted to put a gradient in the app bar. And you can't make the app bar background a gradient. It's simply not possible. However, this is UI. What people see is what they perceive. Doesn't mean that's what it is. Okay, keep that in mind. When people see, it's like a magician. Okay, you are a magician. When people look at something, you want them to see you want them to think they see what you want them to think they see, not what's really there. So, that said, if you want to control the distance between an underline and the text with precision, one possible way to do it is to create a column and make the spacing whatever you need. So main axis size minimum. Another one, if you really want to get, if you're doing this and it's in a small place or so, another possible way to do it is with a stack. But again, you're creating a single object for this text with the underline. Okay, you're faking it, which means if it's anything other than a title or a paragraph heading, you're starting to get really complicated. If you're trying to line it up with other text, like in a rich text, that's not going to work. Clearly, I realize that. I don't know what your use case is, and even then, I have not really tried to do an underline. Again, the only thing I can think of is faking it. If you want to use a row for text, you could mess with the baseline. The baseline will allow it to rise up. But Randall, your thoughts?
I'm asking Gemini. In a Flutter text paragraph, how do I control the distance the underline is below the text?
It's not Gemini, it's Simon Jr.
Maybe we'll see here. And this is Gemini Advanced, which I'm not paying for, but I'm using here. So, there it says use a text rich. Text ticker. Text decoration underline does have a height size and a decoration thickness.
Double check that though. A lot of times it will make stuff up.
Yeah,
but it does seem to make sense. If you did a text with a decoration and added an underline, which definitely seems to make sense, of course it does. Maybe you can change the decorations parameters or even the underlines parameters and put it in a rich text. Now it falls in line with the rest of your paragraph.
Decoration class.
Double check that those parameters really exist.
Yeah.
Don't count on it.
Right. Oh, and okay, so there's a constant for underline, which draws an underline, but it doesn't say at all that there's any parameters to that. So maybe not. It might have hallucinated that there's settings for the text decoration underline property. Oh, well.
Well, while you're taking a look at that,
Yep.
Is it mandatory to add all the license package names in an app? That's going to depend on your licenses. That's totally. What is it again? The CC BY. If you're using something with CC BY, yes. If you're using it, what is it, CC0 or MIT, things like that, then no. You've got to check the licenses for each package. So really that's, going back to an old story. When Flutter first came out, I didn't understand how it worked. I realized that we could write apps for iOS and Android. So I went to Wem Leeler, the original Flutter DevRel guy, the guy who drafted Randall, by the way.
Indeed.
So I went
have
to
that.
Wem Leeler and I said, Wem, spelled WM, not kidding, no vowels. Wem, how is it that Google can have Flutter creating iOS UIs without getting sued to death by Apple? You know what he said? Legal won't let me answer legal questions. So again, the best thing I can tell you about this legal question is check all the licenses individually and see what you got to do according to them. All right, last one for the moment. What is the difference between using a listenable builder compared to a consumer from provider to listen to an instance of a change notifier? Is a listenable builder fine for simple animations? Absolutely fine for simple animations. Basically, I don't know what's going on under the hood in a consumer, but I would bet you money that it has to do with abstracting away either a listenable builder or something else that perhaps listenable builder is built upon. So again, these things like consumers and all, they're just convenience. A perfect example of a convenience widget is the spacer. I kept writing sized box, I'm sorry, I kept writing, what was it, Randall? Size expanded with a sized box in it.
Yeah.
Over and over and over. And then I got fed up with it and I created something called a spacer just for myself. And all it was, spacer was returned and expanded with a size box dot empty in it. Randall looks at it and says, "Oh, you got to push that. You got to push that."
Yeah.
Well, I was like, but it's so simple. It's so stupid. And lo and behold, Hixie liked it and he polished it up a bit and shoved it in the SDK. And that's why we have a spacer, because Scott got lazy. So yeah, listenable builder is just fine for anything simple. In fact, you could use a value listenable builder if you want to strip it down to a primitive.
An
Sorry about the
animation
noise. The dog is.
An animation, is it animation builder? I forget the name of it. Not animation builder. And something animation something is exactly the same as a value listenable builder. They just finally subclassed it to give it a different name if you're not dealing with animation.
Yeah, I think it is an animation builder. And I remember a long time ago, Matt Carroll used to do an interesting thing where when the theme of the app changed, he didn't mess around with packages or anything. He just shoved an animation builder low down right around the material app level. And if the theme changed, it triggered the builder. And that's all it was. You can do your entire state management that way. I wouldn't put it at the base of the tree. Probably a bad idea to rebuild your whole app. At least people have been saying that for 6 years. So it's probably true.
That was our last question. So we could get into your coding, your live coding. Let's see live coding from Scott.
No live coding.
What?
No.
You live coding?
You're gonna get a day old donut, buddy. This is yesterday's coding.
Already proven to work, right? That's the important
somewhat. Okay, and that's let me preface this with a few different things.
The demo will be fun because it could come up with any
well, the demo should be fun. All right. When I made this, number one, I focused on how to make it work, not how it looks.
Yeah.
Okay, this thing it looks like it could have been written by a 3-year-old. The UI does, which is kind of funny because my main specialty is UI, but because my main specialty is UI, it took me longer to write the back end than most other people. Number two, since I usually do UI, my back end code looks like a disaster. Don't judge by the quality of the code. I threw this together as a brute force solution. This is V00001. So yeah, this really is just the brute force solution that doesn't even make it into preview. It needs refactored to even get that far. Then there are a few interesting twists that can happen while we're doing this. They seem to be mostly centered around things going wrong with the context. So let me, in fact, show you a very important class here. Now, another thing that I will tell you straight away is that I have an open dyslexic font, and it drives some people bananas. But the reason I have it is that if I try to use a monospace, my eyes literally hurt, as in physical pain.
Interesting.
So, yes, this is why I use this funky font. Now, this class right here is central to everything in Gemini. It is the content class. The content class uses parts. So this is pretty simple right here. The role is going to be either the user for you or the model for Gemini. So every time there's a piece of content, it came from somebody. You don't need to specify this if it came from the user. The default is user. That's why it's a nullable string. But if you need to specify that something came from Gemini, then you need to do that manually. Now, another interesting thing before people ask the questions, I know you're going to ask, why don't you just use the multi-turn chat, Scott? And that's because I need to make it do certain things that I don't want the text displayed for. Basically, I don't want the text displayed for the command trigger in order to do things. So that means I have to manually look at each one of Gemini's responses. And if it's a command trigger, I have to not display it in the text. And you can't do that if you're doing the regular turn-based version, which works great if you're just doing text. It really does. But unfortunately, no. So, okay, so this must be user or the model. Parts. Parts can be a pain in the neck. When you are pulling your data out of this, there are a number of things going on here, but one of the key things to remember, okay, is you have these parts and you have to get into the parts, but you can't get into the part as it stands because this lies. It's technically a list of parts, but you will never find a part in there. You will find a text part or a data part. And if you just try to reach into this, parts 0 dot some dot text, it's going to throw an error in your face. Okay, just the Dart analyzer is just going to smack you around because this doesn't have anything like that. It's this that does. So part is a sealed class. It's just object to JSON, period. What you need to do is you need to process the text part and get in there with the text. All right, now if you're using data, then you've got a MIME type, the list there. That's great. I have not gotten into that. But this is the beast you really need to get familiar with. And don't forget that when you are reaching for the part in the content, you need to access it as whatever type of part, text or data.
Hey, Scott,
So again,
is this code that you wrote, or is this code that keeps?
No, this is the package right here. This is the Flutter package.
Okay.
For Gemini.
All right.
It is
Google
packages, Google Generative AI right here.
Yeah. Right.
And of course, I made it unreadable by doing that, so it's right below the blue line.
Yeah.
Which, of course, I can't make that any bigger. But it is the Google Generative AI package.
Yep. I'll put a link to that.
The text, if you do a text constructor, you feed it text, it's going to default to user unless you tell it otherwise. These are positional parameters. Yes, you can put user in front, so it's user, comma, or I'm sorry, if you just put the text, it'll do the user automatically. If you put in quote model quote, then you can put comma and your text, and it will assign it to the model as right here. The other thing you can do, of course, is you can do a content.model, which is basically a content.text. So the next question is, why did they name this one model? And why didn't they name this one user? I mean, we got two options, right? There's no real way to just join. I appreciate the offer, but the crew that's been doing this, we've known each other for a long time. And the reason that we do it together is that we know not only do we each know Flutter, but we all know each other. We all know each other's styles, and we all know that people aren't going to panic on camera. There's that too. Yep. Okay. So content comes in a list. Okay. And it's you get a list of content as well, and we'll go into that in a moment. Mm-hmm. But you want to know about the content class and how it's structured, because this is the way you get your information back out. And that's very important. So one of the things that I did, and this is actually pretty darn simple, but I'm going to show it first because it's a lot more impressive when you don't know how it works, like anything else.
Oh.
All right. So
pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yep. Forget that. Nope. Okay. And here is the app that I told you looks like a 3-year-old wrote it, because it looks like a 3-year-old wrote it. Now there are a couple of things that can go wrong, and I'll tell you this straight up front. Number one, a lot of people are pounding this model. A lot. So I will get model overloaded every once in a while. And by every once in a while, I mean, I don't know, about every 20 or 30 times I try to type something in.
Or probably every time, since this is a live demo.
Well, you should have seen it yesterday. They did a train the trainers session. One of the things that we want to go over is Google is doing a, what is it, Build with AI series. Look up your local GDG chapters. Okay. Let me get that back up here too. Look up your local GDG chapter right there. Mm-hmm. They have a free session on building with Gemini and everything. It's this whole series. They're doing hackathons. They're doing training sessions. They are currently right now training the organizers in order to be able to train the members of the groups, and all about Gemini, and it's free training. I mean, free training is always good, right? Right.
Free is a very good price.
Yep. So they did the training for the entire Western Hemisphere at the same time while I was trying to write this app yesterday.
Yep.
I knew the moment that training session started, because this thing completely locked up and it was impossible to get a message in.
Wow.
Simon was saying that shouldn't be a problem if you have your own API. Well, I've got my API key. I've got my own API key. It didn't help. The model was getting beaten up bad. So we could end up seeing an error with model overloaded. I'm not sure if that will appear down here. I can't remember. The way this thing is set up is at the top right here, you put in your question. The most recent response from Gemini will show here in larger font. It has a line limit of 1,000. Hey, you put code in it, right? Then this one down here that is covered up right now is the chat history of both the user and Gemini. Sorry, Randall?
What?
Oh, I thought you said something.
No.
Okay. So you have where you're putting stuff in, you have where the response is going to be, and then down here, you have the entire history. Nice and clear UI. Yeah, clear, all right. That's one way to put it. Blank is another. All right, I'm going to close this up, but it is gdg.community.dev. Again, gdg.community.dev. All right. A couple other issues that can happen with this. One of the biggest ones is that it might misunderstand a command that I ask it, so it'll send a nonsensical command. Now, unfortunately, because I was doing this quickly, I didn't get the error handling in that I want for that. So a lot of times what will happen is it will not enter a line for Gemini and it will do nothing. And it will just cruise right along until you put another message in. Because one of the critical things to understand about working with Gemini, and also I do believe Llama 2, is it has to alternate user to model, user to model, user to model, user to model. If it hiccups in that way, it doesn't put anything in for the model and it gets 2 user prompts in a row, which throws a big error right there and just ruins everything. In addition to that, there can be a couple of other issues, and one slipped my mind right now. I'm sure we'll run into it and I'll explain it later. But both of those issues, any issue that I've run into that is not the model being overloaded, has always been fixed by restarting the app, which tells me the context has become corrupted.
Right.
So instead of restarting the app constantly, I just reset the context, which basically means I nuke the entire chat history except for the starting pieces. Starting pieces are mandatory. I'll show you those in a minute. So if anything goes wrong in that regard, we just wipe out the context and keep going. So with that said, hi. Oh, by the way, it's slow. Up. The model is overloaded. Please try again later. Reset the context. Yeah, I see that in the StreamYard drives me crazy. I wanted to share part of my screen that shows the IDE and the app at the same time, and it won't let me. It's not like OBS Studio where you can get away with that, and I didn't have time to set OBS up. Let's try this again. Hi. Drum roll, please. Pretty please. With a cherry on top.
Did you pay tribute to the live demo gods? Apparently.
It's the live coding gods. Apparently. Does anybody have a chicken I can sacrifice?
Yeah, really. I think you have to face towards Mountain View. I knew I was going to get you with that. I knew it. I just knew I could lay into that joke.
All right, this is not even funny. This is just downright annoying right now. Bad timing, Google.
Oh boy. I wonder if it's just working in general. Let me pull it up and see if it's.
No, it's working. That right there. The
This
model
is
is overloaded. Please try again later. Let me try real quick one more time here. This is going to make me crazy.
Oh
I have
yeah,
entered high and hit enter.
I'm getting errors in Studio too for 1.0.
The model is
So
overloaded. Please try again later. All right. Tell you what, instead of looking at the app right now, we will look at the code.
yeah. Oh, this one just worked. Okay, so it sometimes works.
Yeah, it's people are pounding this thing.
Yep. Good luck
All
for
right.
scale.
So let's start out here. Now, for those who don't know, the way an LLM actually works is it takes in all of what's called the context. It looks at the history of the chat, and it's nothing but a probability machine. This is a stats program. That's all it is. My lady happens to have a master's in stats. She understands this just fine. I keep nudging her to get into AI. Speak of the devil. I was just telling everybody that I'm trying to get you into AI with your master's. So she has a master's degree in stats. Anybody who wants to wave more than $100,000 at her, please just raise your hand. Anyhow, what it does, it looks at the context and it predicts what the next word should be. It does not look at the whole idea. It does not calculate a sentence. It does not find the solution and figure out how to phrase it. It looks at all the history of everything it's ever seen, and it weighs out how many times does this word come after this word, or how many times is this word related to this word, and okay, that's what the word should be. And it just does one word at a time. This is why they have supercomputers doing this. It's the only way it actually looks like it's speaking in real time. But this is a predict the next word machine. That's all it is. So this is what I call a local chat. And we're going to take a look at this first because we will get this knocked out. I created a custom chat message. All I did was I made who and what the text is. Now, the reason that I did this is because I'm making a list of these things in order to display, and also I can control what goes into it. Now, the list of content that gets put in the context is everything. It has to alternate one after the other after the other. But the actual text that has been said back and forth does not. Okay, I don't want to display the command prompts. Again, as I said, so that's why I created this thing. So now local chat is the chat session. Okay. There is a name to the model, there is a personality, and there's a situation. So what we did here, here's the name, here's the personality, here's the situation. This is, really complicated. We have a message history, which is our custom chat messages. This is the one that gets displayed. All right, as I said, it will not include commands. This is our list of content. Everything goes in the list of content because the LLM needs to see everything that's happened since the beginning of time. So here is our prompt. This is going to be the first message that is sent to the LLM. It is the top message in every single message you will send because an LLM has no memory. None. Every single time you send it a message, it's fresh. The way that it looks like it has a memory is every single time you send it a message, you're sending it every single message you've ever sent it. And it looks from the top down at each content item, which gives it the history. And now it has the context that your question is in. And then it answers it and it forgets your name. So you have to put together your context. And this is what the multi-turn chat part of the package is doing for you. Okay, it handles all that. Unfortunately, as I said, I'm handling all this the hard way because I need to, because of the way I'm doing commands. So I said, this is role play. For this interaction, you're portraying a person named whoever. You're given a personality, a situation, and a message from the user. The personality and situation might change in any conversation. Every new personality or situation will be labeled in this context. That is left over actually from the main app I'm writing, where you can flip personalities back and forth. You will answer to the name. You will respond to the user's input appropriately, considering the personality and situation you are given. Be sure to use only words. There is an error that can happen if it tries to send you anything other than words in a text part. And unfortunately, Gemini will try to do that, and it will blow up in your face. And again, we'll have to get rid of the context and start over. So this means you especially need to show code in plain text instead of blocks. This seems to be the number one offender. Yeah. The current personality for the name is the personality. Current situation for the name is situation. Now here's where it gets fun. Additionally, you have the ability to trigger methods in the client-side app. This is done by prefixing what you say with Command Act. And you see now the magician is telling you how it's done before we show you the app, which really sucks. I wanted to show it to you when you didn't know what was going on. It stands for Command Action. By the way, if you write something like this, Command Act is not part of the package. I made it up. Mm-hmm. You can call it do this. You can call it do it now. You can call it whatever, but just make sure that whatever you do, don't make it something that the model might say in normal conversation. Bad. So you can just call this googly moogly. Put googly moogly in upper camel case and you're fine. But here it stands for Command Action. It will cause the client-side app to process the response as an action. If you say Command Act UI blue, it will turn the app bar color blue. Here's a list of valid commands. You can make and here you didn't have to spell this out like you're making a map. This is artificial intelligence. You just tell it what to do in a sentence and it figures it out. Even though it's just a probability machine. I know, contradictory, whatever.
Emergent behavior.
Pretty much. You can make the UI red, green, blue, purple, or orange with Command Act UI color. I think I forgot to put orange in there. The first letter in the color must be capitalized. Okay, so like blue up here. You can also trigger animation with Command Act Animate. If I ask you to round the box or its corners, return Command Act 50. If I say square it, then return Command Act box 0. When you send a command, send only the command by itself without any other text or line breaks. I ran into that the hard way. It tried to send me a sentence with command in it and didn't work so good.
No.
So this is the prompt that is being sent. Now we initialize the chat. I update the chat history with who, the user, and the prompt that we just created. So this is going into the chat history. And then the model's response that I'm going to put in the history is sounds good, I'll do my best. Now we have a message from the user and a message from the model, and we're primed. It's like priming an engine.
Scott, did you make up that response, or did you actually type that whole thing in one time to get its one response for that?
I made it up.
Okay, interesting.
I could have put in, it really doesn't matter what's here. Take a long walk off a short pier, whatever.
Okay.
So this change in name actually is not relevant to this app. Sorry. I've got leftover stuff from another app I was pulling it from. Change characteristics and situation, not relevant for this app. Update chat history, very relevant for this app. We need to know who it is and what the message was. If who is the user, we're just going to add content.text latest message. Then in the history, I add this as well. Okay, so now we've got it going into the message history and the content history. The reason I do this every single time is because it's a text message from me. There's never going to be a command there. Otherwise, if it is not user, use a content.model constructor and give it the latest message. Now, if the latest message is greater than 5 in length, and the latest message substring from 0 to 6 equals command act. Now, we're going to add the custom message. I'm sorry, if it's not equal to command act. Now we add it as text from the model. The reason, again, that we do that is if it is command act, don't put the text in the text history. And that's why you're not seeing it automatically added right here. So, and again, here's our custom chat message. So I just walked you through the entire chat history class, one at a time. There's not much to it. There really isn't. Now, this thing. First of all, I apologize for the deity class. It's not a God class, but when it grows up, it wants to be a God class. Alrighty, here's our home screen. And actually, let's see if we can get this thing to work now. I would much rather have you see what it does before we walk through all this. Okay, so you know.
This worked for me, so that's a good sign.
Hi there, my name is Jill. Okay, and I didn't show you that before.
I'm still not seeing it.
Trying to remember where I did. I created a model Jill, and its situation is that it's very helpful and it's a cooking expert. So you can say things like, "How can I make beer?"
Oh, look. Simon on the plane, maybe.
There we go. What level of beer making experience do you have? None. Now, if you notice down here, it's in small text, but this is model, me.
Hi, Simon.
Over and over. Not a problem. Let's start with the basics. Beer is made from 4 ingredients, blah, 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 blah. So
we're still not seeing that screen. We're not seeing that screen.
Oh, for goodness sake, I'm an idiot.
I was trying to flag you on that.
I thought you were talking to Simon.
Well, I was talking to Simon too, but I was also telling you that we're not seeing that on the screen yet.
Gotcha.
But you missed that. Okay.
Okay. So the model says, "Hi there, I'm Joe. How can I help you?" I say, "How can I make beer?" Selectable text. Each one of these is actually a separate list view item. Before we get started, what's your experience? None. You notice this isn't down there yet because this is the latest response. So we've got all that. So you see that it can do text. And also I say round the corners on the box, and there she goes. Now, unfortunately, you have seen how this works, which ruins the magic.
I'm wondering if Simon's on the plane right now. He looks like he's on the
plane. I'm
not
on a plane.
Oh, okay.
I'm definitely in the hotel room. Oh, this is a terrible view. Oh. There you go. I just want to drop in and say hello. I won't stay long. I've got a dash in a second, but sorry, I couldn't answer.
You've got a dash? You brought your dash with you?
No.
Bad joke.
You got a dash.
No room in the luggage.
It's the only kind I have.
Cool. All right. Well,
safe travels. Was there any questions any vital question you want to be answered? I have like
we could ask. Wait, how do you make the text underline change position?
Yeah. How do you change the height in it?
Yeah.
The text
Can
underline
you?
change position. What do you mean?
Like, make it lower or higher. Somebody asked how to change the
The
distance
the
between the
gap
text and
between
the
the underline
underline.
and the text.
That's normally done by the text rendering engine. I would suggest that you actually just do a custom painter and actually do it yourself as one option. I would also take a look at the line height. So there's also strut style, which also might help. But basically, you should be able to set the line height in the text, and that might push the underline down. But to be honest, you're better off just doing a custom text decoration.
So,
Okay, so it's not in the text decoration already?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
yeah.
By the way, let's make the UI purple. Come on, don't overload on me. Don't overload on me.
Yep. Working.
Yeah, all those mice are going around.
Yes,
I don't have
squirrels.
Gerbils going around in the little wheels.
Well, this thing is getting pounded really bad. Let me make sure that I hit enter properly too. Oh, and that's another thing. Something I had to do with this app was when you send there you go. When you send a message, you need to use a flag to say messages in progress. Because if you hit enter again and you put in 2 messages from the user at the same time, again, it blows up.
I'm literally, that was it, just me dropping by to say hello. So I will have
Thanks,
to
Simon.
I have to
see you next week.
But I will definitely be around, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.
Sounds good, man. Good luck. And by the way, check in with Nash.
Yeah. I'll see him tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
And now we got to pay him scale because he showed up.
Nope, no unions in the UK. Anyhow.
Okay.
One of the nice things about this, now you notice that the text didn't change. That's because the text, well, there was no text added for any of these commands. We have a comment. See you, Simon. Okay, thanks, Marco. Remember, we're working with AI. Okay, it will interpret what you send it. You don't have to specifically say make the UI a certain color every time. Now, just for conversation. By the way, I have a new keyboard. The typos to prove it. Now green. Okay. Blue question mark. That's it. Blue. The context tells it that we have been changing the color over and over again. So we don't have to specifically say that. When it reads that whole context that we just sent up, like a person, it will understand what we're referring to. But again, now that that message is done, it has deleted everything you've ever sent. You have to keep it client side and ship it back up every time. So square the box. It's taking a while. It's thinking. This thing really is getting hammered. There it goes. Now this might fail, because if you remember from the code, shrink it is not a known command. It's animate. So let's see if it can figure this out. Nope. Null is not a subtype of color in typecast. It tried to interpret this command as a color. And if I try to send another action right now, I believe it will fail. Oh, nope, it worked. Very cool. So it did put the error in the context. I wasn't sure that it would do that. So this is basic control. And the thing is, if you can do this, you can do anything. Absolutely anything. So let's take a look now. You've seen it. You've seen what it does. Now let's get more into how. As you can see, here was our error. As soon as I add that to the stage. Right down here, it tried to send a color command that did not match the excuse my crappy code. I forgot orange. There we go. Now orange is in here. So this is just the colors, and what happened was it tried to access the colors and it gave command action something that didn't fit. So let's see, we can get rid of that now, we can get rid of that now, and we can focus on the home screen. Not the AI assistant, the home screen. So again, please excuse the crappy brute force solution has never been refactored even once code. In fact, don't need this anymore. There were several. Okay, actually, yes, we do. I think it's just being assigned. Anyway, we've got a text editing controller for the input. We have a focus node because if you haven't messed with this before, when you submit, your text input field is going to lose focus. So you have to throw the focus back into there again every single time you send something. Here's our model. Okay, we're going to use Gemini Pro because it's text only. We're not doing anything with any images. The API key is forget it. You're not going to get to see it. There was an issue with my other version where it was more complex and it needed to be initialized in an async function. So I ended up having to do a widgets binding instance post frame callback. Used a post frame callback. So awaiting response, this is the one that prevents you from sending two things in a row and messing up your own context. This is the response that comes from the model. Okay, and what it's going to do is, well, it's a future void. It's being used by a future builder. Okay, this is the latest response, the text. This is what gets shown in the big box. So far, so good. Nobody's asking questions. Randall looks like he's a statue. Oh, there you are. Cool.
I'm moving, I hope.
This is our actual chat instance of local chat that I showed you the class before. We named it Jill. Jill is helpful, nice, energetic, and enthusiastic, and she's helping us learn to cook. You can make this anything you want. You can make it an author who can teach you to write like Patrick Rothfuss, who wrote The Name of the Wind. By the way, if you haven't read it, go get it. You can have it be an expert Flutter developer who is, sorry, if we're going to change its name to Simon, make it an expert Flutter developer and have it do your code reviews. What could possibly go wrong?
Yes.
Anyway, this is our app bar color, of course. This is the color that gets changed. The width of the animated container to start with, the corner radius to start with. Handle submit. Handle submit is pretty easy. Because of the way the future builder works, I needed to run it through this way. If you got questions about that, ask Randall. He's not talking very much. In fact, Randall, can you, without seeing any more code, can you explain why I had to use handle submit in order to run in order to make the future response equal the result of a different async function.
No. Can't
I remember
explain
there
it.
was a reason last night, and
Oh,
I
God.
can't remember it. So anyway, when we handle the submit, the first thing we do is we check if we're awaiting a response. If we are awaiting a response, it tells us to go get lost. Do nothing. Otherwise, it's going to set state. For those of you who are beginners, this is a terrible name. Set state? No, it should be called refresh the screen after.
Yep.
That's what it should be called. Or refresh the widget after is a better thing. So we're going to refresh the widget after we set the future response to be equal to what gets returned from process send, and process send, we're sending in an input controller's text. Okay. But set state really means rebuild this widget after doing whatever's in here. So if you're a beginner, believe me, that drove me nuts for the longest time in the very beginning, because the documentation was written by people on the team for people on the team, and it was not beginner friendly. They've really come light years in distance. With
if you go down one level from set state, it's actually calling mark needs build, which actually makes more sense, except set state also makes sure that you're not doing two of these at the same time, which should be a build within a build request problem. So,
which you can't do. You're trying to call, what was it? You're trying to call set state while a build was in progress. There's an error for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, mark needs build. Now we're getting into the 3-layer cake. Look up an article by Norbert Kosier. Was it Kozir? Sorry, Norbert. I haven't seen your name spelled in way too long, but he did a great thing on the 3 layers of Flutter, the 3-layer cake. That's a great article. Tells you about all these. And mark needs build is on a different layer than the UI. It's not a widget thing. It's an element thing, isn't it? Or is it a render layer?
Yeah. No, it's element.
It is element layer.
Okay. Managing the rebuild of an element. Yeah.
Okay. Rebuild following. There you go.
That would make sense too.
Yep. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to feed the process send method the text that you put in. So now process send takes the string, it's async, awaiting response equals true. Do not allow the user to do anything until this is done. First thing we're going to do, since we lost focus, is we're going to kick the focus back into the input box. Now, we're going to go to the update chat history. And since this came from the user, we're going to send the input controller text from the box there. And remember, when we go to input chat history, we get a who. If who equals a user, then we add a content.text to our chat history content list. Then we add message history, the custom chat message for what the text we're displaying, user and the latest message. And then we're out of here.
Oh, Marco's got something to share that's not related to what you're doing right now, but this answers the question from much earlier.
Oh, nice. Thank you, Marco.
Content padding, edge
I'm
insets.
sorry.
Nice.
See, Randall was driving for a moment. Marco, in his next message, Marco said that will push the bottom line down. So if you're on Twitch or Twitter, I will never call it by that other name. Yeah. Also, if you have a Tesla, I don't know. I know years ago, one person died in a fire because the doors wouldn't open, and the sister-in-law of a prominent senator in the U.S. government just drowned while she was on the phone asking for help. She accidentally backed the car into water, and something must have shorted out. The doors would not open. Never, ever buy a car that does not have mechanical door levers. That and also carry a seatbelt cutter and window breaker.
Yep.
All right, moving on. So now what we're going to do here is we're going to create a list of content, and we're going to load into it the chat history of content from our instance of the local chat. So now we're going to declare a new content response. A content response from the model, supports multiple candidates. Candidates are a whole new thing we haven't discussed yet. Let me dig into that in a bit. So we're going to get a response, which at the moment is still a black box. The response is going to be equal to calling the generate content method from the model, and we're going to feed it the content. It's going to generate content response, which is what it's actually going to return, and we'll get into that in a moment. So now process receive response, catch the error, print. So moving on from there, we call process receive. Now process receive is just my name that I made up for something. What happened was I had a God method, which already I don't even like this one, but I had process send, and then I had the receive information just continuing on in one method. So I broke it out into processing receive, and it will feed the response from the model right there. So now we're going to create a variable for the model's text part response. It is not the text. It's an object that extends part, as we discussed earlier, the text part. And it is not it is not a part, it extends part. The content contains part objects, a list of parts. It does not differentiate between text part and data part, so we need to cast it before we can use it. Final resultant text part equals response, candidates, last one, the content, dot parts, first one in the list as a text part. What? Okay, we should probably dig into this right now so that we're not so lost, right? Right. Okay. When we get a response, what we're getting is a number of things here. The main one to worry about is your list of candidates. So your list of candidates is something that contains a content object, safety ratings, citation meta, finish reason, finish message. Okay, and you get a list of these every single time that you get a message back. Now, fortunately, we only seem to be getting one, thankfully. So this is what we're getting. Sorry, it moved on me. Goodbye. Somebody's saying bye. If you only want to push the bottom line down, then you can change the content padding like this. Edge insets bottom 40. Thank you, Marco. One of the better ways to see this actually is in the debugger. So let's look at it that way. So we'll run that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this resultant text part. Now this is the part, not the text. We have to go into the text part and pull out the text and turn it into response text. So I'm just going to send it a hi. The model is overloaded. Please try again later. Send it another hi.
We need priority access when demoing.
Yeah, really.
We're willing to pay double to
There
have
we
these hits come
go.
through.
There we go. Now, our resultant text part is right here. So what we're doing is we are looking at the response. Man, I wish I could make this bigger. Can anybody even see that?
See
What
that
we've
there are
got here,
characters.
the response contains a list of candidates. There's only one item in it, the candidate. Here's a content object in it. It has a list of parts. The very first one in the parts list is a text part, and that is our actual response. Hey, how are you doing today? Now, one of the things when you're troubleshooting with this, you want to pay attention to your finish reason. This particular finish reason says stop. That's normal. That means everything's fine. If you get something else there, that's when you get things like the model's overloaded or something. So there's no finish message. Safety ratings. Sometimes you can accidentally violate these with ridiculous junk. Okay, harm category is sexually explicit. Index is 3, sexually explicit. Probability of that, it's saying the probability of this being sexually explicit is negligible. So there are a bunch of different safety ratings. This one is hate speech. This one is harassment. And this one is dangerous content. So you can learn a lot by digging around in these things. But this understanding what's in the response and in the candidates and in the content right here, and right here, and what the parts are and the text part is crucial to being able to write for this thing. Yeah, exactly, Brendan. I totally agree with you. It makes me crazy. I can make Brendan's saying that you can make the text in the editor window bigger, but not here. I know. Believe me, I've tried. But the reason that this is important is this is the stuff I'm cutting up and getting out up here. So hopefully this makes a lot more sense now. The response contains a list of candidates. Each candidate has a content. The content has a role. This one's model. It's model or user. Has a list of parts. We should only have one. And this is a text part. It could be a data part. So got to be careful. We have to cast it as a text part before we can pull the text out of it, which is what we're doing right here. Now that it's been cast, we can yank the text out of it. Boom, which we put in response text. Now that this is finished processing, we'll let the user send another message. Now that we have a response in text, we can update the chat history. This one's going to be model. Sorry, the dog is scratching an itch. Response text is our latest message. So we go into here. Who is the model? We've got the latest message. If who is user, no, it's not. Else, add content.model constructor with the text part that is the latest message. After that has been added into the content list, we check to see if we should add it to the text history, which if the length is greater than 5, because any command action, sometimes you say hi and it says hi. If you don't check to see what the length is, this is going to blow up when it looks for a substring, because your text response is not going to be long enough to get that substring out of it. So make sure the length is greater than 5 for a command action. And then double check to see if the first 6 characters are equal to this, or if they're not equal to this, actually. If they're not equal to that, then we add the text latest message into our history of the text parts. So now that we have done that, over here we need to check if the response length is greater than 5. Welcome to my crap code. Yes, I know. Like I said, this is V0.0.0.1. What we're going to do is check if it is. Go ahead.
You could have just had starts with in the text string.
Okay.
That way you wouldn't have.
Do I need to double check the length if I use starts with?
Because then it won't start with it, right?
Sounds good. Do what he said. See, that's one of the things I'm going to refactor with next.
Mm-hmm. You got it working. That's fine. That's the important part.
Yep. Yeah, for a brute force, it works. I would not release this garbage, but for a brute force, it gets it done. And we're actually trying to understand how the Gemini package is going to work in Flutter. So that's the main thing. Don't look at my code, look at their code.
Well, good.
So now we check to see if it's a command action. If it is a command action, then we process the action. We'll go into that in a second. If we don't, then the latest response from the model is going to be response text. And if it's not an action, the latest response from the model is going to be response text. And that's what gets displayed in the big box. Now we process an action. When we process an action, this is nothing but a bunch of if else. You know, I did start making this a switch. The problem is you can't, well, you could use a switch to do this and have a gazillion different things going on here. I did it with if else, whatever. But if the response is command act animate, then change the container size between 100 and 300, the width. If the response is box 50, we change corner radius to 50. If it's box 0, we change it to 0. If it's none of those, then the color is going to be the colors with command act, and we're going to assign that to the color. Now, this is why we had that error earlier, because it went down, it had a command action, but it did not match animate. It did not match one of the box ones. And when it tried to go to the colors map, it couldn't find a key. So that's why it came back and said that it's a type mismatch. So down here now, we're going to init state. Our super is always first for you beginners. Whenever you do init state, you have to initialize the super class because it's the foundation that everything is built on. Think of it as the concrete that's under your house. You can't build your house until you build the foundation first. And then when you're doing dispose, the super has to be the last thing you tear down. If you're going to demolish a house and tear it down, you can't tear the foundation down first without tearing down the rest of the house that's on it. So init state, always super first, dispose, always super last. So we initiate the chat, and then after that's done, is initialized true. Again, I believe that's really only being used for my other app. And here we go, dispose. We get rid of the controller, and then we dispose of the super. Now we get into my lousy UI. So we're using color here to allow it to change programmatically. Again, command action for a color change. Boom, there you are. We just set state, and that's the color change. Title, I just did that because that's the way we always do title. It's the way it was always done, so it's the way I'm doing it. Whatever. Okay, we got some padding, we got center, we got a column, yada yada yada. We got a standard text field. We're calling handle submit on unsubmitted, which we have already gone over. But real quick, handle submit. We double check to see if we're awaiting a response and return if we are. Otherwise, we call process send. Process send we just went over. When that's done, we call process receive. We process the response. when it's done. And when everything is done, we're going to clear the input controller so that we wipe that text out, and then we're going to set state on the whole page. So, and this is something that I like to do. IntelliJ allows you to go into the to-dos and make your own custom to-dos, custom colors, custom things. If I do section with a colon, it'll do that. So in our label, I put the word me because, well, that's where I type. We're going to do space between, because what we're doing here is this is the button that is going to wipe out the context if we get stuck. What we're going to do here is we're going to go into the content history and we're going to remove the range between the second one, exclusive. When you're playing with this stuff, when you're looking at a substring, if you want 6 items, if I remember correctly, what you need to do is you have to remember that it's exclusive. So if you do range 0 to 5, you're not going to get 6 characters. You're going to get 5 characters. Okay. If you want the first 6 characters, you have to go 0 to 6. If you want to remove the elements number 2 through whatever, that's elements, not second one. If you want to keep 0 and 1, you have to put 1 because it's exclusive. So between 1 and the length minus 1, because we don't want an off by 1 error, that can be somebody's license plate off by 1. It does fit on a license plate. I checked. So we go ahead and remove everything except for the first 2. And then we also do it in the message history. Sorry about that. So then I'm double checking that this worked correctly, and it can go away. So remember, when we started this, what we're keeping here is our original 2 items. We're keeping our prompt, right? And we are keeping the sounds good, I'll do my best. Because for those who weren't here earlier, these have to alternate. It has to start with user, then it has to go model, and it has to go user model, user model, user model. And this primes it. Okay, so if you didn't have these and you sent up just a user command, you wouldn't have anything from the model, and it would blow up. Smoke, flames. I shouldn't joke around like that. I literally did catch a hard drive on fire a couple of years ago. Anyway, reset the context is our text on that button. Next, we have the animated container to the right of the button. And the width is going to be width. Height is 100, of course. I just made it white with a border. The corner radius, which can be changed. And then on the opposite side, a stupid little trick that I do. If you have 2 items in a row and you want to center one of them but not the other, you have to put, or at least I put, an empty sized box with the same width. Because if you notice, I made the button a width of 150, and then I made the sized box a width of 150, and I stuck the animated container in between them, and then I just made the row space between. So that slaps my button far left, my empty size box far right, and centers my container. So now we've got the most recent message from the model, which is in the great big box. Latest message from the model. If there is no message, blank string, so you don't see anything. Max lines 1000 because, you know, if it's actually any good, hopefully we can get code out of it. And it does actually format the code pretty nicely. It uses 3 backticks, and you know, it just doesn't display it the way Markdown would, but it does give you the backticks. Now, we display this in font size 18, so that's nice and big and easy to read, and it's obvious because the latest message is the one we're most interested in. But we do want the whole history in case we have to go back and look at it. So what I did was I made that gray, the background of it. This is where the future builder comes in. Okay. So it takes a look at the snapshot.
Scott, back a second ago, you're talking about how it's putting out the 3 backticks. Would it be worth it to look at the markdown widget to try to interpret the output then?
Quite probably, yes.
Cool. Maybe for your next release.
Yeah, for V000002.
Yeah. Yep.
That will be refactor number 2.
Okay.
Refactor 1 starts with.
Yep.
Okay. So the chat history so far, excluding commands, this will not show the commands. Okay, this is our future response that we got earlier. If it equals null, enter a question above. This is what we see when we first start. Okay, if we have an error, we handle the error. Yeah. Else if true. I cannot remember why I needed to do that.
Ooh,
it drove me crazy. It drove me nuts. And I hate doing this. This is bad. Naughty. I don't get any coffee after that. But I can, we'd have to dig through it and remember. And unfortunately, we just don't have that kind of time. But this is a workaround for something that would probably be a lot better done in a different way. Like I said, don't judge the code. So we have a list view builder. The number of children is the message history length. The message history, remember, does not include the latest response from the model because that gets put up above. So then we have an item builder index. If index is greater than 2, okay, let's pretend that we're doing this as a talk, because I will be putting together an actual talk on this. Why do you think we need to double check to see that the index is greater than 2 before we display it in the history?
Because the first 2 items are your prompt.
You got it. You don't want to display that massive instructional prompt right here. These are your first 2 items. That's your first one, which gets put in right there. And this is your second one. So we don't want to display these. And so that's why we double check and make sure we skip those right there. So now I created a selectable text.
Or you could have taken the list, and just say skip 2 on it. Because then it would be empty if it's not there. Anyway, okay.
Yep. Yeah, and again, lots of ways to refactor. So what this is doing is it's displaying the name of whoever the message was from, then a colon, and then what the message was. And this is all contained right here in the message history, which is a list of custom chat messages, as we said. So yeah. We're doing that in font 12 because unless we're going to dig through it, we really don't care. And then, excuse me, if the index is greater than 1, the message history, we're going to add a little bit of spacing in there. And that's it. That's the whole app. Really, there's nothing else to it. And again, to show how it's working, oops, I closed it up a little too much. Because I did 150 and 150, which is naughty, I've got overflow errors when I try to do certain things. So let's see here. One more time for those who didn't see it. Do not judge the crappy UI.
Oh, yeah. It's about as bad as some of my stuff.
Okay. So Let's double check for our overflow error first. Animate the box. How bad is this overflow going to be? Whoa.
Didn't.
I actually got it. Very cool. Oh, there's a chance that this could error if I did a command first. Let's see. How do I make wine? Are we going to get an error out of this?
You go to the store, you pick up a bottle of wine, you say, I want to buy this.
Still waiting.
I guess that's how to buy wine.
We could rotate the box if we created something for it. Did I got rid of my debugs that told me the message was sent. My debug prints.
You could also debounce it by disabling the submit on the box too, right?
Possibly, yes.
You have that flag already. You might as well use it to control the on submit nullness.
Oh, I'm sorry. The message came up in the debug pane. The model is overloaded. So reset the context. Ask again. Let's see if that works.
Is it preparing the wine on background?
Really? It's growing the grapes, man.
Yes, grapes.
All right.
Waiting for harvest time. Please take care of the vermin.
So we don't even know if it we don't even know if it had an issue
there you go.
because of moving it first. So there we go. Sterilize your equipment, store the glass container. Now, when we do the next one, I'm not going to expand it too much because we want to be able to see the rest of the things here. So then make the app bar green. Now you notice no text was added. Again, and this is for those who came in because we have a lot more people now in the chat than we did before. Now, this, as I had shown before, all I have to do is say purple because the entire history is being shipped up every single time. For anyone who missed it, the LLM has no memory. You have to keep a history of everything that happened and ship it all up together so that the LLM starts reading from the very first line of the chat history all the way down to the latest message, processes it, sends a response, forgets your name. So if you don't keep it client side and ship it up, it isn't going to work. Again, there is a multi-turn chat function that is much easier to use than what I'm doing. But when I tried to do that with commands, it had certain problems. So the way I wrote this is the workaround so that I can do commands. So purple. Boom, done. Around the box corner.
So Scott, are you sending the purple response back again as well, though, in the chat history? I guess you would have to, right? So that it knew that it did like a green or a purple
it's
earlier?
In the text. It's not in the text history, but it is in the content history.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So you're maintaining that you have separate logs for both sides.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
That makes sense then. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, that's the difference between the chat history content and the other chat history. So what you're seeing, what you can read is the text history. But what the LLM needs to see, what Gemini needs to see is the whole history, including the commands that it sent.
You could have just had one. Yeah, you could have just had one history and had a flag on the things that aren't to be viewed, like the command and the command response.
You could, yeah. And depending on how you want to do it, that could be a lot neater.
Yeah.
But at the same time, now you're getting into a bunch of conditionals.
Yep.
And it, conditional branching, blah, blah, blah. But again, the thing is that's splitting hairs on performance.
Mhm.
We're not writing 120 FPS game.
No.
We don't need the min max. So whether or not you want to write what you just said versus versus doing it the way I did it, that's up to you.
Sure.
How about pick a valid color for the UI and change it? Boom.
Do that again. Just say do
Again.
that. Yeah, there we
Just
go.
the
That'll
word
be
again.
fun. Yow, that's crazy cool.
Okay.
It's like having a little friend somewhere buried inside. Animage the
Waiting.
box. Oh, it figured it out anyway.
Square it. It's
Hanging
just
out.
slow. There's no error yet.
Oh, good.
It could potentially, nope. It could
It
have
did it?
potentially errored. The model is overloaded. Please try again later. Now, we didn't get a valid response. So let's see if we can make this work. The problem is I don't know how long to wait to see if I got a response. And I also, because I don't have my debug print statements anymore, I could have, this could still be locked out. If it did not get a valid response from the previous message, don't forget, when we send a message, it locks it so we can't send a second message in order to prevent the duplication problem. For those who haven't been here, as we said, you have to go user model, user model, user model, user model. If there is not a valid response yet and I hit enter and send a message twice, what you get is user model, user model, user, user. Not going to work. You're going to get an error. And it looks like we are not going to be able to recover this. So let's reset the context. It does not know what animate it one more time means because we just got rid of the context. So let's see if that's going to work. Depending on what's going on with the model, I may need to restart.
Simon's out today. He has in the middle of traveling to somewhere in Europe, right?
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam, yeah.
Yep.
So we're holding down the fort. Scott's
now I
doing
can't
the
do
live cutting.
combo commands. I'm sorry. Yes, we are holding down the fort.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Simon is here in spirit, though. You don't see him, but he's here in spirit.
Yeah. And again, Gemini is being pounded. That's why it's so slow. It just did. It just did. That's what that does. Is it's changing the border radius. Now, what would be an interesting one is that, sorry, if I sneeze, trying to prevent a sneeze. An interesting one that I could have done is just have it send an integer or a double and have it set the corner radius to whatever it sends. That would actually not be difficult at all. So, but the whole point of this, I mean, yes, these are silly, stupid little things that I'm doing with it. But these are just things in a switch. It sends text. You tell it to send a certain prefix for commands. It doesn't display anything that's a command in the text chat. and it processes that text with the command prefix through a switch. You can have it do anything. Anything. Whatever method you can write and drop in that switch, Gemini can trigger it remotely. Now here's a twist for you. I don't even know if I should say this because it's a workaround on something that is it's intentionally disabled. What if you did a command that told Gemini to go into part of your app that is a web viewer or web browser and search Google and then scrape the result and send it back up to Gemini? Would this not allow it to search the web?
Yeah, and in fact, that's kind of how Gemini Advanced, the website, does a lot of its work. And it's also how the Copilot is being used in Bing. Is that it's the chat machinery is watching for certain responses coming back from the LLM to trigger actions. One of the things I would suggest as well is consider the possibility of in your instructions, and I've done this already successfully, even with the Gemini Advanced website, is you can say, when you respond, I would like you to respond as a JSON payload that looks like this, where I put question and answer as a typical question and a typical answer. And that's a complete JSON response. And it does do that from then on. I ask it a question, it echoes back a JSON of my question and its answer. It is so cool to watch that happen.
I'll tell you what, there are a couple things here. Random a valid app bar color. What did I just do? Oh, sorry about that. I was typing in the wrong thing.
Oh, yeah, that's gotta be careful.
Change the app bar to a valid color.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Again.
Oh, it asked you. Nice. So it did an interaction there too.
Yep. I really needed to say shrink the box and expand the box as triggers, but I didn't. And if I try to put that in there, it will hiccup the whole thing. So
Yeah, good luck on that one.
yeah. Please, for the love of all that is holy, explain to me what a monad is.
It's half of a duad.
This will probably smoke it. A monad is a way of structuring code that allows you to chain together a series of actions and handle errors in a consistent way.
Yep.
It's a bit like a container that wraps around a value. Okay, and here it is in Haskell.
Mm-hmm. With the triple quotes, yeah.
Yep. And again, we can use a map function.
Yeah, it actually can. Although it might have to create the classes because they're not.
I just hope it doesn't. Oh, yep, there we go.
Yep.
I didn't want it to
Made a
overload
maybe
the model.
class. It made a maybe class. Wonderful. That's nice.
Yeah. So, and because I created this with selectable text, you betcha, you can just copy that and drop it right into your code.
Yep.
So explain inherited widget.
If you gave it the instructions for how to structure an RFW remote Flutter W, I forget what W means, but that package that basically where you can build the UI on the server and have it drive widgets on the client. I think that's how their demo did. We were doing that, create a Flutter app that does this thing, and it changed the screen, changed it, had an arbitrary UI. I think that was with RFW. But yeah, it just requires more tokens in the beginning, more programming in the beginning.
Square the box corners. Again, I've only put in a few commands into this switch, but use your imagination. You can do anything. You can trigger web searches. You can animate things. You can have it drive a game. You can have it every single time the user does something, send a message to Gemini and have it respond with its own move. You can do anything. You want to make it play chess? Send it the content chat history of every single move. It'll play. You want it to play poker? Make it play poker. You want it to write code? Make it write code. You want it to write good code? Good luck. Come on, Randall, you could have laughed at that.
Sorry, I was being stunned by what I was reading. I asked Gemini Advanced, "Do you understand the RFW protocol?" And it explained it entirely to me. It already knows the RFW protocol, so you could actually say, "Show me a widget of a box inside a box with rounded corners using the RFW protocol." You could type that in right now, and it would actually work. That would be interesting. Yeah,
but I asked it similarly.
See, there it knows.
Yes, I know RFW protocol.
A Flutter RFW protocol. Make sure that you say Flutter. It's not showing.
Well, it's just Dart, right? There's nothing.
The Flutter RFW protocol specific. It's showing you something about Python RFW protocol. Yeah, there you go. I think that's probably enough.
At some point we're going to hit an overloaded error.
Of course.
For those who are just joining, the model is being absolutely pounded from people all over the world. And hang on. I got people pounding me in DMs real quick, and that's not normal. Okay, there's that one.
But that would be a fun bot to have it interpret RFW protocol coming back from the server and just have it start drawing UI and then spit out the code at the end of the day.
How does it now? I don't know anything about RFW protocol.
Yeah,
but you're looking at this, right?
Yeah, that's just how to fetch it. That's not it. Yeah, the thing is that you have what RFW is a wire protocol that describes Flutter widgets. So you might have the word rectangle or box or circle or whatever, and then it will give you widgets that you can paint on your screen. It's a way of enabling remote update of UI just by changing server elements rather than having to batch new code going out. So it's short of say what Shorebird's doing. It's not code push, but it does allow you to manipulate quite a bit of your UI just by changing data on the server.
Cool.
It's a Google project. It's I forget who's in charge of it, but it's like I think it originally started as a Chris Sells thing as well, but it's been stepped up a bit, and it does get changes every few weeks or so. Yep.
And for the folks who have been coming in recently, a lot of times people in chat are talking to each other and answering each other's questions. So if we see a question and there's not a queue, we're assuming you're asking each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you want us to know the question is for us, put the queue in front. Now that said, this one was pretty obvious. What's your point of view about Copilot? I believe mine is mixed. Now that they have a way to turn it on and off very quickly with a key combination, I'm much more likely to use it and play around with it. It used to be that you couldn't turn it on and off easily. So, and the problem that I had was when it was on, it was hijacking my autocomplete. And for those of you who use live templates in IntelliJ or Android Studio, or if you use snippets in VS Code, you can imagine what that does if you've got a library of several hundred of those like I do. So when Copilot hijacked my autocomplete, all that work that I did setting up those snippets went in the trash. So I said no. However, now you can put together a key command to turn it on and off. But you use it quite a bit, right?
I'm using Codium because it doesn't suffer from the idea that GPL code was used to train it. Codium has very carefully been watching licenses of the stuff they use for inputs. So, and it's also free, which unlike Copilot where you got to pay for it. So yeah, I've been using Codium. I played a little bit with the Gemini that's built into IDX, but haven't had enough experience to have a one way or the other to say. But it looks like it's trying to do the same thing. It's watching and does autocomplete and can also be asked specific questions about refactoring. So it's also there. So for those few of you out there who have gotten access to IDX, you also have access to it there. So kind of fun.
Nice. Well, I mean, you folks have been walked through the entire app from start to finish. Again, please forgive the crappy code that can definitely be cleaned up. Elegant it is not. But again, I threw it together fairly quickly. And what it all really comes down to is tell Gemini that there's a certain trigger that will trigger an action, have a switch that examines them, do whatever you want in that switch. So it's just out of curiosity, what kind of ideas do people have? What can you do with this? Come on.
I have an application that's almost polished. It every minute of the day, I feed the time of day and the weather, the current local weather, into a request that says, please write a limerick that includes these two pieces of information. And that will become a talking clock. I'm going to add text to speech to it. And once a minute, you'll hear a limerick from across the room that will give you the current weather and the time.
Sorry, I'm chuckling at that, but what I'm really, really laughing at is what the main thing that we need to have AI do for us.
Yeah.
Okay. Is name things.
Oh, yes. That's good too. That's
great.
Invent a name for something that's like the something of the something. Yes.
Yeah. Here's a list of my current variable names. Help me come up with another one, please.
Yes. 000011ILLI110OI.
Come on, folks. We got 386 people in here. At least one of you has to have an idea of what you can do with this thing.
Well, we're also past the 2-hour mark, so we could also call this pretty much the completion of the show and invite everybody to come back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Oh, we should probably clarify that. For those of you who are not in the U.S., probably wondering why we're starting apparently an hour early, it's because crazy U.S. daylight savings time kicked in over this past weekend, which is about 2 or 3 weeks off from almost all of the rest of the Northern Hemisphere. Sorry for all you people that are in Europe right now that are like, oh my God, why does the show move so early?
While we've got a bunch of people here right now, I do want to say that number one, of course, you can go back and look at the video of this. But in addition to that, I am in talks with some Googlers from 3 different parts of Google.
Oh.
I didn't give them enough notice to be here today. But over the next couple of weeks, we should be able to get a few of them in here. They are Googlers. Andrew Dobo is the one who works on the Flutter package for Gemini. Then we also have some folks from Ecosystems, which is the Google developer groups and other community building and things to make developer experiences better. They are doing a build with AI or build with Gemini whole series right now with hackathons and code labs and all this other stuff. And they're in the process of training the GDG leads and GDSC leads so that they can do that training. Now, if you're not familiar, there is Google developer groups that are like a meetup group. There are also Google developer student clubs that are based in universities. So both of those are involved in this. Go look up GDSCs and GDGs on, well, you can Google it. Surprise, surprise.
I think Google knows where to find them.
Also, I was talking to some people from the GDG program, trying to see if we can get somebody from that program in on this as well. Unfortunately, they have a couple people out of office, so they're shorthanded and they weren't able to spare anyone on, I don't know, 3 minutes notice. But they are all talking about trying to get somebody in here over the next couple of weeks. So let's see what we can do. And also, we might even have Simon back. Maybe.
Pretty sure we'll have him back, right? He's not gone for a week, is he?
No, he's gone overnight, actually. He'll be back in London tomorrow morning.
Wow, cool.
So, yeah, he's doing it overnight.
Those
but
were
that's really... Oh, go ahead.
I just said those were never fun. I remember my travel days where it was a flight one day and then a flight the next day. That was never all that exciting.
No, not good.
No.
Not good. If you do travel through some of the larger airports, especially JFK, one tip: if you get stuck overnight, airports often have these little rooms that are for rent by the hour. They look very expensive. However, especially if you go to Minute Suites in New York's JFK, I believe it's by B36, they stop renting by the hour at 9 o'clock, and you can get an overnight 9 to 5 for $130 US. So this is a day bed that pulls out. You can sleep there. They have showers that you can pay for if you don't have lounge access, because some of the lounges have showers. But the great thing about it, if you're stranded overnight, you can have a place to sleep. You can lock it. You got your carry-on and everything with you. You got blankets and all that. You do have to get up and get out by 5 in the morning. But here's the really cool thing: you don't even have to get out of security. These rooms are inside of security. So when you get up in the morning, you don't have to go back through the lines again. And for $130 US, come on, you'd pay double that for a hotel room near the airport. Sure. Plus an Uber, plus all the time going in and out. You don't have to deal with any of it. So really saved my rear end one time when I had a cancellation. So, all right. We have been at this for 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yep.
If it, again, as Randall said, people might think we were only been here for an hour and 20 minutes, but the US had a time change over the weekend. Since nobody seems to have other questions about what we're doing, we're going to wrap it up, and we'll see you next week. And
we'll see you in 166 hours. So it's the same time next week as this week was. I mean, it's exactly.
It is noon US. It is typically noon US Eastern, 9 o'clock, what we call Google time, which is the US West Coast.
Right.
If the rest of the world has done the time change, there'll be a 5-hour difference, which makes it 1700 UTC. If not, it'll be 1600 UTC. Make sure you double check the time zones.
Yeah.
Randall's favorite thing in the world: time change.
DST, evil. Please, let's stop DST, please.
All right. That said, be sure to come back next week. Look for Googlers. Look for more cool content about Gemini. And hopefully, maybe we'll have an API for 1.5 by then.
Yep.
So, and I have no voice left.
Let's go. Let's go.
I've got my dashes up there.
Push the button. Push the button.
All right. I am pushing
Bye,
the
everybody.
button.
Bye, everybody.
Y'all take care.
Bye.